For years and years, entry-level road bikes have been fitted with group sets from Shimano, such as Claris, Sora and Tiagra. However, those group sets are being discontinued and being replaced by a brand new family of components known as cues. So, how do they compare? Is Shimano offering us an objectively better product or quietly downgrading us and just making it really hard to see? Well, I've focused on Shimano Tiagra and 10-speed cues in a stone-cold comparison of specifications to find out. We'll start with what makes these group sets similar. Firstly, both are 10-speed, but of course you can get cues in 9 and 11-speed as well. Both cost a similar amount of money and both offer hydraulic disc brake configurations. Moving on to gearing, and this is where these two group sets start to differ. Tiagra's gearing is much more road focused. With a larger semi-compact chain set on offer, bigger, more powerful riders will be missing out on cues. With a smallest cassette of 1139 on cues, the jumps between those gears are much bigger compared to even Tiagra's largest cassettes. Cues gearing will be good for those who are riding off-road, mixed surfaces, or on hilly terrain. However, Tiagra will be better suited to those who live in flatter areas or are just more powerful riders. You may assume powerful riders would be experienced cyclists who would be riding bikes with group sets like 105, Ultegra, and Durace. However, riders who simply weigh more will put out more power and need those higher gears to maintain a comfortable cadence, especially when riding downhill or just on the flats. But in fairness, those that do weigh more but don't have the associated power will enjoy the easier gears found on cues when, say, on the climbs. Gearing options only make up part of the gearing story though, because Shimano has introduced a new technology called Link Glide on cues. This technology is something that Tiagra doesn't have and is designed to provide increased durability, and it can take more abuse under load while offering smooth shifting with superior chain retention. What's the real-world application of that though? Well, imagine you're riding up a really steep hill and you've maybe not changed gear soon enough and your cadence has dropped right down. Where previously you would have heard a lot of crunching and clunking as your derailleur fought to move the chain across the cassette, now executing those types of shifts will be smoother and easier and pose a smaller threat of the dreaded dropped chain.
A quick one before we get on with the video. If you enjoy this video and you'd like to see more, then please consider subscribing. It helps more than you know.
When it comes to the different braking systems, the technology is actually really quite similar. Both feature the same one-way bleeding system, which makes bleeding from caliper to lever really nice and simple. The only very small difference, which will make virtually no impact on everyday riders, is that the new cues flat mount hydraulic disc brake caliper features an integrated design that eliminates the need for a separate adapter, something that Tiagra doesn't have. While the disc brake technology is virtually the same, the discontinuation of Tiagra does put another nail in the coffin of rim brake parts. But really, that should be of no surprise to anyone. While I could talk about weight, I think it would be totally pointless too. I don't think it's really going to affect many people's real-world experiences between Tiagra or cues, and when I asked Shimano about the claimed weights, they actually told me that they only reserve the granular detail on weights for their higher-end group sets. Let's talk about livability and how these two group sets will differ as we move forwards. As I've mentioned, Tiagra is going to be discontinued, and Shimano told me that the Tiagra 4700 family of components will officially be discontinued in 2027. The idea behind cues is that Shimano can consolidate its product offering, meaning bike shops can stock more of what is needed, allowing them to either supply the part you need or, thanks to the cross-compatibility, create a fix to help keep you rolling. So, in this respect, cues will be really good for parts availability. And due to the nature of discontinuing a product line, Tiagra availability will only get worse. Shimano also confirmed the new Q's components are not directly compatible with Tiagra 4700, so there's no official backward compatibility. From a day-to-day use of the product perspective, I don't foresee there being any huge difference between the two. You'll still have the same schedule of maintenance to attend to, and advice like keep your bike clean, keep your chain lubed, and your brake rotors free of contaminants will still remain to be absolutely true. Cost-wise, Q's and Tiagra line up pretty closely. The things you replace most often, like chains, cassettes, and brake pads, are all within the same ballpark, and even more costly items are very similar and reasonable too. I've also noticed in the pricing of fully built bikes, where brands have had Tiagra spec bikes and have now migrated to 10-speed Q's, there has been a drop in cost. For example, the Specialized Alley Sport cost just shy of $1,800, while the new Q's built replacement cost just shy of $1,500. So that's definitely a win for consumers. Aesthetics are always subjective, but here's my 2 cents. In my opinion, Q's is slightly more generic looking. It's all black, which is no bad thing, it's just slightly less interesting to look at. Tiagra has a more distinctive look, which I really like. The Q's front derailleurs are smaller and the cable routing is kept more internal to the derailleur itself, rather than having an arm extending up like on Tiagra. The Tiagra chain set looks to mimic the one-piece design of its bigger brothers, however, the Q's chain set looks a little bit more basic. Perhaps the design is cheaper and simpler to construct and creates a smaller opportunity of having QC issues. The Tiagra rear derailleur is a last hurrah to the classic small polished derailleurs of old, and I'll be really sad to see these go. The Q's rear derailleurs are obviously much more new age looking. They're very angular, much larger, and almost mountain bike-esque in appearance, so not quite as elegant. The all-black Q's cassettes will be good at hiding a dirty and grimy drivetrain. However, the anodization will wear off over time, and it could make the cassette look very worn when it might not be. I'm probably being overly sentimental for Tiagra with its classic polish finish. While I do think Q's looks quite brutish, it is also going to be very functional, and I imagine some of its design language has come from Shimano finding ways to produce it for a lower cost. The Q's levers look to be a convergence of 105 and Tiagra hoods. They're slightly less rounded than Tiagra, especially so on the mechanical levers, but the brake lever blade shape design on Q's looks to have come from an old higher end level Shimano mechanical group set. This is a very good thing, as the extra curvature allows for an easier shift motion as your fingers don't have to stretch quite as far to make the shift, especially helpful for those with smaller hands. But also, the extra curvature means they sit in a more natural position when you want to grab a handful of brakes. While the last generation of Tiagra was starting to adopt some of these features, albeit to a smaller extent, it is clear that ergonomically at least, Q's is a step forwards. Now feels like a good time to say as well that I am trying very hard to get my hands on a Q's equipped bike for a full ride review so I can fully test out things like ergonomics and shifting. But let me tell you, they are not easy to find, let alone convincing a brand to let me have one. Before I share my conclusion, some may be wondering what we're going to lose when Tiagra is discontinued. For starters, there will be no more rim brakes. We'll certainly be losing out on Tiagra's road-focused gearing, and lastly, we'll just be missing out on some heritage. Tiagra has been around since the late 90s, so this move does mark the end of an era. Right then, in conclusion, the longevity of Q's is very good. Its ease of compatibility and better availability of parts is good. I think the gearing does let some riders down. As brands move to use Q's on their entry-level road bikes, bigger, more powerful riders, or even those keen amateurs who just don't want to spend lots of money on a bike, will likely find the spread of gears and jumps between them quite annoying. That said, All-road and gravel-adjacent builds that feature a Q's group set will be a great pairing, and it will certainly be good for those who live in particularly hilly areas. Servicing will be straightforward and simple. If you're an at-home mechanic, you'll still be able to complete all the jobs you're able to on Tiagra. The only difference is, if moving to Qs also marks a move to disc brakes, then that'll be the only new skill that you'll need to master. But the one-way bleed system is really easy to work on. Aesthetically, Tiagra really owns that old school cool look, embodying much of the classic Shimano design language. New Qs, to my eye, looks a little bit more industrial compared to Tiagra's elegance, but I doubt it will get in the way of real-world performance. Price-wise, I think the two are comparable enough that it's not worth arguing about. And remember, people rarely buy group sets. They buy bikes with group sets on. And those prices, so far at least, do seem to be lower. So that's a win. Let me know down below if you're currently choosing between a bike with Tiagra or Qs and which one you would go for, or if you simply have any questions.